everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Audrey and this is Audrey Curates. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Audrey, as I said a few seconds ago, and these are my babies. I have been keeping this secret for a long while, but I have 3 babies. Not the human kind, the paper stress kind, the pricey kind. Well, children can be pricey, but welcome back everyone. I wanted to do this video to perhaps give you some tips on thesis writing and dissertation writing, because obviously I have done 3 of those. Can't say I'm an expert in them because I still do mistakes, but these are some tips that I think can help someone. So let's go through these, shall we? I'm very excited. So in Malta we get this tradition where you print off the research you do. Doesn't necessarily do anything because you're leaving them in a library and God knows who will ever open them again, because you won't. So yes, we have this tradition of printing them off. I did a BA and I also did 2 masters. Crazy, I know, but yes. These are my babies and I'm going to give you an overview and give you some tips that I learned from while doing these dissertations. The first one is my BA honors in history of art, and this bad boy was really stressful because this was my first dissertation, and you think that you would know how to do your dissertation because you research and actually know what you're doing, but in this particular thesis I wasn't aware of what I was doing and it showed. First tip I would say is find your research topic early. So this was 3 years, it was a BA of 3 years, and I had archaeology and history of art. I was keen on continuing history of art, although I loved archaeology, but I was more interested in art history rather than archaeology. And I decided to do this topic with the help of some tutors, I believe in 2nd year, just after my Erasmus experience, and I decided to go with Paleo-Christian, Byzantine and Muslim art and architecture. God knows how much books there are on the topic already, and I wasn't aware. So second tip I would give you is to look at how much research there was on the topic. If there was a lot, I would recommend not doing it because you won't do well in your thesis and it will drop your average of your degree. And if you want a first class, believe me, you need to do this step. And basically what I did is research the whole 3 periods. So I had Paleo-Christian, Byzantine and Muslim art and architecture, which I loved doing, mind you. But then I also had to do a gazetteer at the end, which is basically where you do a catalogue at the end. So I would have images of something, then a short description, and then obviously continue off with more images and more descriptions. And I had also 3 chapters on each and every period. Funny story, I finished this dissertation half an hour before my deadline, and I was rushing to the printers to actually get these printed and then rush to actually submit my thesis. I think I submitted my thesis 5 minutes before the deadline. I wouldn't recommend it because it was stressful, like very stressful. I mean, I was doing the table of contents, list of figures and plates and the whole imagery the day of the deadline. Wouldn't recommend it. So that's my next tip, is that start early, finish early, and make sure you're not stressing yourself out and not sleeping for 72 hours. You can imagine how much I slept after this. The last tip I would say, that if you're not keen on the subject and you think that you want to change it, because this topic was so well written and there were so many books that I ended up reusing most of the research that was done. And usually when you do a thesis you need to find a new subject to create new research. Unfortunately I wasn't guided well. I also didn't take responsibility and actually understand what was meant to be done with a dissertation. So I ended up having a viva, which is when you defend your thesis and that was pretty much against what I was doing with this research. So definitely recommend that if you're not up for the topic, have a think and then restart your research. The second one, which I really love doing, and it is very sentimental, because this was I worked on this dissertation with my uncle, who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago, and it was something which I truly appreciated, because I'm horrible at maths and I needed to have maths in what I was doing. He was also an engineer, so it'll all fall into place. So the second master's I did was preventive conservation, and I focused on photographic collections, and my thesis was all on cold storage systems in Malta, whether they could work on renewable energy to create more of a sustainable environment and be sustainable as an institution. And yeah, this was a favorite of mine. Again, find your research topic very early on. So I believe I started this researching for this thesis at the beginning of term 2, and basically what I did was I knew that I wanted to focus on photographic collections, and then I spoke with the program leader, and she was like, oh, why don't you focus on cold storage systems and in Malta, how can you adopt that research and actually do something with it? And I was like, well, we're thinking of going for more renewable energy sources, and why not focus on renewable energy sources in Malta and see how institutions can rely on renewable energy. And that's what I did. So the research question, which you always need to have in your dissertation, it was, can a cold storage system in Malta run on renewable energy sources and create a more sustainable environment? And I loved doing this. Obviously, when you know the subject and you know what you want to work on, the research becomes simpler and you start focusing on different subjects. With this one, I started off with photographic collections, identifying other institutions that do this, because obviously it wasn't new to the area, but then again, Malta is sometimes very behind on what can be done with these things. And then focused on solar energy, because Malta has an abundant rays of sunlight. And yes, and my uncle helped me to understand the megawatts and kilowatts per year and all that jargon that I needed to know. And I focused on like doing algebra and all that. So it is a very fond memory I have of my uncle, which is something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. And of course, with every conservation thesis, you need to have some case studies. And with this dissertation, I had 2, which I had one drop out the week of my deadline. So tip number God knows what is, make sure if you're doing case studies, make sure you have backups, because if one fails and you need to do 2 case studies, you don't end up with just one. Because obviously when I ended up with one, I couldn't compare, and that made me lose a lot of word count. So you can imagine me frantically asking the institution I was doing the case study on to send me images the day before the deadline, and it was horrible because I was abroad. Obviously the dissertation I managed to do in a month before I actually left to go on holiday. And this person who I spoke to, I was like, this is the questionnaire, if you kindly send it to me by this day, that would be great, so that I can include it. And this person never, let's say, managed to do it. And frantically, 2 days before my dissertation, I'm trying to wrap up this chapter with no information whatsoever, and it was very annoying. But then again, I love this thesis, I loved how it turned out, and let's just say I know if I work with this person in the future, I know what to expect. But yes, sure that you have case studies, you have a few backup plans, because some things may go wrong. But yes, that was my second thesis. And last but not least, of course, is the St. Andrews one. So with St. Andrews, this was my, let's just say, my best thesis out of all of those. I think I was very adamant on doing focusing my dissertation on 2 topics before I even left for St. Andrews. Of course, I knew I had to do the dissertation, so I was preparing before I actually started the course to do on these topics. So the first topic was digital storytelling, so incorporating storytelling, which is something I love doing, and museums. And then the second one was on inclusive education in museums. And of course, education in museums is very highly researched, and this is new. Digital storytelling is quite new, and the element of storytelling is actually quite new and being reintroduced by some institutions. So I was like, listen, I love storytelling, I love digital storytelling, so might as well focus on that for my dissertation. And I decided to do this topic in perhaps March, April of last year, and the deadline was in August, so I had that time to actually find some resources. Of course, with the whole COVID situation, I ended up using more digital resources, which is not necessarily bad, but most institutions look through your bibliography to see how vast your research was, so you need to actually expand and then focus, and that is how I work. Usually I start very broad and then start focusing these things, and it is something I recommend because you cannot understand your topic without actually doing broader research and understanding the context in which your dissertation is happening. So in this dissertation, I wrote about 3 chapters, which is again a format I use in this dissertation as well. So basically what I would recommend is leaving your dissertation as short as possible, but obviously including as much research as you can. So instead of having 6 chapters, make sure to lower it down to 2 to 3 chapters, because you don't want it to be long-winded. For example, my BA was obviously 3 chapters, but the 3 chapters were long, and then I added gazetteer to do. This was simply 3 chapters. The first chapter was about storytelling in general, then including information on digital storytelling, and then the second chapter was about emotions and how museums are using storytelling to actually connect with people. And then the last was, and then I adopted the same format. So 3 chapters, I had 4 case studies with 2 more backed up. So if I didn't receive information from 2 of the case studies, I had backups, which was obviously a repercussion from this dissertation. And yes, this was my last one, and I am very happy with this one. Obviously, the culmination of doing 3 dissertations in my lifetime has led to this being the best dissertation I have produced in my academic lifetime. Even imagery, for example, for this dissertation, I couldn't go myself. I am a photographer as well, and I love taking images of artifacts and all that stuff, but I do recommend that you seek high resolution images for your dissertations. It is very annoying when you're trying to create the best product you can and then having low resolution imagery in these dissertations. Of course, it gives you a bonus because you're relying on good imagery to make a good impression of your dissertation. Obviously, every institution is different. These 3 dissertations are all different. Of course, for example, if you even see the title, these are titles, the black and the red ones are titles, and then the one that I did at Northumbria University is a question-based title. So all of them are different, and you will have modules on your dissertation, so don't fret. As I said, as a summary, make sure to have your topic very early on so you can start researching, and even if you need to change, you're not changing last minute, and you're not causing stress to yourself. Of course, when submitting your dissertations, make sure that you're leaving ample time to have it proofread. I never had these proofread. I think I did the proofreading myself, especially for this one. I used Grammarly as well for this one, and I just spent the last 24 hours of my deadline actually proofreading my dissertation, and I submitted this at 5 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not too sure, but yes, make sure that you don't stress yourself out, being the person that stressed themselves out throughout these 3 dissertations. But yes, and make sure that you produce something which you like. That is very, very important, because if you don't produce something you like, the marks won't reflect it, and your lecturers will know. And obviously you want to be happy, because the sacrifices you do for these in these courses, in these degrees, some of them cost money. So you don't invest in something and then obviously not doing your best, which is sometimes very maddening. But that's fine, it's fine. We're fine, we're fine. We're fine. So yes, these are my children. They cost a lot of money, but that's fine. We have a job now. But yes, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will see you next time. In the meantime, make sure to like this video, subscribe if you enjoy this content. I have some very special upcoming videos, and if you're here for St. Andrews content, please stay tuned, because I have a few videos coming out as well. And yes, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, take care, wear a mask, and I'll see you. Bye bye.